Hi, I'm Mr. Red. We're going to go over the I do, we do, you do teaching method today. First, we're going to talk about what standards this helps with. Next, we're going to go through the process of I do, we do, you do, some things that make it beneficial, and then also some common mistakes that you'll see. And then at the end, we'll kind of go through step by step how you can organize it. So first thing, direct instruction. The teacher delivers clear, structured, and engaging direct instruction with well-prepared materials and strong presence. They use strategies such as modeling, questioning, and checks for understanding to ensure students are actively processing the lesson. Students are fully attentive, following along, and responding with enthusiasm when appropriate. Collaborative work procedures. The teacher seamlessly integrates structured collaboration during a class period. They provide clear expectations, roles, and tasks for students to engage in meaningful peer discussions. Group problem solving or guided practice. Students are actively engaged, working together purposefully and holding each other accountable for learning. And the last one, independent practice. The teacher establishes clear, structured procedures for independent work while setting high expectations for quality, completeness, and timeliness. Using rubrics, exemplars, detailed instructions, they ensure students understand expectations, provide targeted support and meaningful feedback, and promote continual improvement in a calm, productive environment. So right now we're going to jump into what I do, we do, you do is. So it starts with the I do. So this is teacher-led. The students should be 100% focused on the teacher. So the teacher starts with stating the objective. What is it the students are learning today? What is it you're going to cover? And then in there, you need some kind of baseline so that you can connect what the students already know to what they're going to learn. And like I said, teacher-driven, explicit explanation. Just straightforward. This is what is going to happen. This is what this thing is. Think alouds. This is when the teacher will talk about the process of thought. When you're teaching your students in this method, you're not just teaching them the subject matter, but you're teaching them how to think. Avoid premature student input. In this section, the I do, because it is explicitly explained, when you have students interacting already and raising hands and doing shout-outs, it can distract from the base message of this is what we're learning today. So although student input is valuable, we don't want it in these first few minutes. This method works because of this first part being clear and concise. Students need to be able to be focused and understand in 5 to 7 minutes what is it that they're learning. Then we move on to the we do. This is when you start having work with your students. So guided practice tasks as a class. Questioning and prompting. This is when you need to reinforce what you taught, but instead of you just saying it over again, this is when you start prompting and questioning students so that they are able to come up with this on their own. Multiple examples. When you're working with your students, it shouldn't just be a quick, okay, I talked about this, we did a problem together, now it's your turn. Studies show that the more practice you do as a group, the more beneficial it can be. Use of scaffolds. You need to let your students slowly come to understand the principle, especially if it's more complex. So you should have things built in to where you don't force them to leap when they just need to take a simple step, okay? Active engagement techniques. So this is when you have all call, choral responses, turn and talk to your neighbor, things like that. Your students should be actively participating in the we do section. Immediate feedback and error correction. If you don't have some type of feedback on how your students are doing, it's not good, because you're going to end up turning your students loose and letting them practice this on their own. And if you haven't gotten any feedback to where they are, that could be really bad, because now they're going to start doing something the wrong way. And all we've done is teach them something that's wrong and not true. So making sure you have places in there to help, and we'll talk more about that in just a minute. Now we have the you do. This is when you turn it over to your students. So you're going to assign them an independent practice, state clearly what it is they're supposed to do. They should be showing that they understand what you talked about. They should be able to go through each step just as you did a few minutes earlier. The teacher's job is to monitor and assess how they're doing. This isn't just okay, it's the student's turn, now I can go sit down. But you should be teaching wall-to-wall, interacting with the students, understanding how are they doing. Are there things that multiple students are having problems with? And that could be a formative assessment, right? That can be something that you see multiple students having a problem with this section. So you need to stop as a class, go back, practice that so that they understand it better. Exit tickets. You need to understand where your students are at the end of class, right? They just learned something new. How are they doing? This way you can also clear up any misconceptions before you send them home, right? They might have a misconception for a few minutes, but if you have a formative assessment at the end of class, they've only had that wrong way of thinking for a few minutes. But if you skip that step and you wait until the next day, now they've had that misconception for 24 hours, and it's more difficult for them to learn it again. Extended practice for mastery. So the whole point of the I do, we do, you do is by the end of it, the you do section, they're going to be able to take this concept and store it into their long-term memory. And that happens when they have extended practice. So why is the I do, we do, you do so effective? It's helpful because it's one great way of having them store new and complex material. Their executive functions. Students have a hard time with organization, their thought processes, they're still learning how to do those. And so this method helps them with that. It's a mental training wheels. It lets them be able to think about what is the most important information and let all the other things they might focus on kind of stay off to the side. And it creates these good learning habits. It's also important to understand that this is in line with a classical education, right? So this method definitely is a truth-seeking type method. It is all about how students think and respond, and it also helps them understand rigorous types of learning. Now we're going to go on to common mistakes that you can get from I do, we do, you do. The first mistake is skipping the guided practice or rushing the modeling. The most important are those first two steps, the I do and the we do. Because if your students don't understand in those first two steps, the third step is completely useless. So make sure not to rush, otherwise they're going to have errors. So make sure you do at least one problem together. Even if it's simple, right? If I can explain something to my students, it's a very small concept, we should still probably at least do one together. That way, if there is any problems, we can clear those up quickly. Less is best. So this is when you're talking about you sharing the concept with your students. Okay? You want that done as quickly as possible and the most efficiently as possible so that they have a chance to discover for themselves. Or not discover for themselves, but discover with the class. So keep student interaction to a minimum during the I do, during the we do. Make sure you understand where your students are. Number 2, too much teacher talk, not enough student engagement. So make sure you're on point. Don't get distracted. Don't tell a story. Don't talk about an interesting fact. Just quickly get them to focus on this is the objective, this is how it works, these are the steps. So this happens, like I said, because over-explaining, you're not giving your students enough opportunity, especially during the we do section. Okay, so I do short and sweet, visual aids, demonstrations, prompting questions. Number 3, failure to check for understanding. Without checking, students might have misconceptions, right? And that's bad because now they're learning something the wrong way. So every stage, during the I do, we do, and the you do stage, you should have things built in that will help you see where your students are. So there can just be a quick question, all calls, thumbs up, thumbs down. Maybe you pass out whiteboards for the day and they can respond. Show of hands. Have a student explain what it is that they learned. Number 4, lack of clarity in the you do. So if I explain something to students, a concept, and then I say, okay, here's your work. If I don't explain my expectations or the quality for the assignment, they might understand the concept, they're just not sure what is the expectation to show that concept. So you need to clearly state what it is you want your students to do during that time. What is the task? How much time is it going to take? What should they do when they're finished? What's the noise level like? Are they working by themselves? Are they working with a group? Say, clear directions, visual clues. Anchor examples. I would recommend having an example you do together that's on their worksheet. That way, if they take it home, they have an example of it. They don't have to dig through their binders. They don't have to try to remember what was written on the board. They'll have it with them. Number 5, not gradually releasing or over scaffolding. So the way this method is so useful is because you're getting information over time. And the problem is you have to find the sweet spot of students are understanding this information at their pace, and it's not too hard or too easy, because it leads to boredom, or they get frustrated and they're not able to do it. So make sure the I do section is nice and sweet, to the point, and then turn it over to the students. Let them start processing and thinking and doing the steps on their own. And then if you're seeing students struggling, what help can you give them? What kind of scaffolding should you add right now and in the future to help your students with those very rigorous objectives? Not being flexible. It comes out unnatural and weird. And so read the room, understand how your students are doing, right? If they got glazed over eyes more than normal, go ahead and, ask some questions, prompt them, see where they're at. It isn't about the teacher. It's about the students, getting them to understand the concept. Number 7, neglecting to connect the lessons or parts or rushing the closure. So this is tying it up at the end of class. You need to tie it up in a pretty little bow. They might have unclear things, and this is just one way to make sure that we clear those all up before they leave for the day, right? Because if they have an unclear thought, it's better to have them have that unclear thought for just a few minutes and not a whole day. So recap your main points, go over a problem, turn and share,